Morning Express is where you're at. It's time for the way it is. It is now 30 minutes after 7, and today happens to be the 31st day of August 2015. What are some of the big stories that have been making headlines? That's what we'll be looking at and tackling right here on the way it is. And introducing the panel and the guests that we have today, I'll start with my extreme left. We have Senator Hassan Umar, who is the Senator for Mombasa County, also the SecGen for Wiper Party. Great to have you.
Great to have you.
Did you have a good weekend?
An athletics weekend. If you saw my tweets over the weekend, wow, it was just a great weekend. But I remember after ASCO won, I tweeted, now we need to have what do you call this? Jamaica win the women's 400 by 4x400, and to have the US win this one so that we can take the title, and that's exactly what happened. No prophecy, just a statistical, mathematical chance of winning. Okay. I think it was a great day for Kenya and our athletes generally.
And what's your message to the athletes, you know, as of course some of them come back
I know some of them quite personally. I think we're very proud of them. They make this country, you know, they give us a sense of pride. You see, we see the Kenyan flag, hoisted high up. You just get really proud to be Kenyan. We only worry is what a few people are saying. Once we become successful, somebody then sees an opportunity and just messes us up. You know, it happens in almost all our successful enterprises, Kenya Airways, whatever happens. Somebody sees a very successful enterprise, they start to a scheme of deceit, also a scheme of totally defrauding an entire industry. But I'm happy that we are where we are. I want to be very positive. I think we need to also put together our management of Athletics Kenya here locally, and move forward.
All right, I'm going to come back and maybe we'll talk a little bit about athletics, because there are a few questions that I would like to answer. Next is Moses Kajwang, Senator for Homa Bay. Great to have you, and I hope you had a good weekend too.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, I had a great weekend. I spent it out in the county holding prayers with people from Homa Bay. It has been the season of camp meetings. Homa Bay County is predominantly Adventist, and during the months of August and September, we usually retreat into camp meetings where we pause and thank God for His faithfulness and for His love and His kindness, and that dominated my weekend. Sports also was part of it, and I'm also immensely proud of the Kenyan athletes for winning the World Championships. What our athletes do to this country in terms of brand value is so huge that even brand Kenya will never be able to achieve what our athletes achieve for us. And I think we need to take them much more seriously than we do. When they are coming back into the country, I know you'll find all these masqueraders at the airport with mursik giving out to the athletes as if they're the ones who cultivated them to the level where they're at. We are very good at joining people once they're successful, but we do not want to do the hard work to bring success to our people. And we must now ask ourselves, how do we nurture the next generation of great athletes and go beyond athletics also? Over the weekend, I was also very excited that Gor Mahia is just about to win the Kenyan Premier League with several
consecutive time.
Yes, third consecutive time unbeaten with several games at hand. We must also look at other sports like soccer and rugby and nurture the next generation of great people. I think Kenya, God has endowed us with greatness when it comes to stamina, when it comes to athleticism, when it comes to the strength that we can use to pursue sports. And this is what is going to project this country at a different level as far as branding is concerned on the global scale.
All right, last but not least, we have Ambrose Sweda, who is a lawyer. Your weekend, and great to have you, first of all.
Thank you so much. My weekend was good, rather quiet. I was in church and then preparing children for school this week. After last week was very heavy, traveling up and down. But otherwise, congratulate our athletes who went to China. I would say that in my view, and Dr. Milesman would say, that is what is called true leadership. Giving out, showing your true element, showing what you are made of, the stuff you are made of, and you bring out your glory, and that glory glorifies your country, and it glorifies God. I would only wish, if you look at the javelin man, Diego. Actually, Diego has shown that glory is within. You can bring it out with endurance, determination. So I would say to my fellow Kenyans, especially the young people, that from this athletes is not about looking at them and admiring them and trying to be their friends. It's a question of learning how they have brought out their aces. And then you go back into your bank internally and you bring out your element in whatever area, because you're supposed to dominate the world with your gifting. What you are gifted with is what you use to dominate the world. And I think these people have dominated the world. And that is what is called greatness.
Do you feel like Kenya is doing enough for athletes? And I'll start with you, Ambrose Weda, in terms of appreciating the gift that we have. And like Moses Kajwang rightly says, they're doing more than even Brand Kenya would do in terms of putting Kenya on the map.
I think as a nation, we are not doing well in terms of mentorship, first of all. You have, those are the right mentors. Before you use them to sell Kenya, they're actually the right people that have shown out themselves, that when you use them, you tell the young people, this is possible. Take, for instance, Diego. You don't have to have a big whatever, you don't have to have sophisticated coaches, you can do it. And again, these people, having shown the world, these are the people we need to use as a nation to sell our nation. So that when somebody says it's a hotbed of terror, we're able to show, is this terrorism? Is this? So the problem is that when it comes to doing some of these things, decision makers, leaders, they take the center stage. Because most of our leaders don't have their glory. In fact, they get their titles from offices. You take offices from them, they are nothing. So when these people come, they overshadow them. So what do? They shun them behind. If Diego was to come and be near even senator here, people will forget he's senator. So we need to use these people to sell Kenya.
To sell Kenya. Moses Kajwang, your take on how Kenya perhaps is treating our athletes in terms of remuneration and even ensuring that the younger generation is able to take up such a sport and develop it?
I don't think we are treating them fabulously as we should. Before this squad left the country, there were some mamas that there are certain allowances that had not been paid, or there are certain promises that the government was reneging on.
Actually, Julius Yego mentioned that there's a directive that was given by the president, and to date, as by the time he was leaving, they still had not been given that money.
Yes, so you know, we expect these guys to go out there and perform very well, and we assume that their performance, they will be paid by, you know, in terms of prizes. You know, we leave them on their own. Yet, as a nation, we are the beneficiaries of their success. And I'll say it again, in terms of branding power, in fact this year there are 3 events that have significantly enhanced our standing in the global scale. One, Obama's visit, it allowed us to get coverage on television channels that we wouldn't have gotten. Number 2, this success in athletics. And number 3 will be the visit of the Pope later on in the year. If we look at the worth of that brand visibility, the increase in our brand perception, and the very positive brand perception, despite the very many challenges that we have back here at home. You know, when someone says we are a hotbed of terror, probably they just use the wrong terminology, but it does not mean that there's no terrorism here in Kenya. It's still there. But our athletes allow the world to look at us from a different perspective. We must treat them better. But also for posterity, we need to be much more firm and focused and come up with a program that will ensure that we've got a pipeline of budding athletes who will see Kenya win the world championships in the next 15 or 20 years. Sports is one of the things that has been devolved, has been pushed down to the county governments. And I want now the governors to, as they think about building roads, as they think about providing water, they must also make it an agenda to ensure that sports is nurtured. And the different corners of this country, there are areas where people, you know, are fishermen, and they swim every other day. And you wonder why we have never produced world champion swimmers. You go to Rusinga and Fangano, where I come from, or some of the islands where Senator Hassan Omar represents. It's because at the local level we are not doing enough to ensure that these people, we support them, we nurture them so that they can burst into the global limelight. Okay. But small things like allowances, surely in this time and age, such a successful squad should not be running around and asking to be paid allowances, which really is a pittance compared to what they win.
Yes, the amount of global coverage they're giving us, and what they
compared to what an MP or a senator earns, it's a peanut. They have to be paid. I think let's be honest to ourselves, because we don't bring as much glory to this country as these men and women do. I think these young people, you know, at that age, you know, have carried the country on their shoulders and, you know, thrust it, you know, to the skies. And, but I want to agree with my young brother, Senator Kajwang, that we need to actually look at the entirety of the sports industry so that we can be able to nurture talents. We have very isolated talents. I can tell you for a fact, all these successes are not because of a very deliberate investment by a government, or, but these are individuals who have taken it upon themselves. If you look at even at the sports industry, it's Wanyama as a person, it's Dennis Oliech as a person, it's Victor Mugabe. We need to have a very
more
deliberate in our, so that, and as Moses says, people now go to the airport and take credit. I saw a very, somewhat, the president whispered to somebody to win the 400 meters. You know, I mean, this kind of, you know, media frenzy and, you know, what we see on a regular basis, this PR that is extreme in its nature. I think these are some of the things that we need to look at. People taking credit for things that they have done very little. A president gives a directive. Iego says a directive of a president has not been met. Maybe we should take it to the TNA disciplinary committee, you know, for that type of, you know, transgression against the presidency. And but right now, because they have done well, if they had come with 2 medals, sometimes, you know, sometimes things go wrong, and this time things went perfectly right. They went so wrong for the United States. I saw it from one race to another, to another, to another. Yeah, and it went right for Jamaica, and for Kenya, for that matter. I think we should have won the marathon. It was so painful not to have won it, where we were aged out to second. And I think there was the men's marathon, which was also a point of conversation within the social space of the media. So I think we now will come out and we will, you know, take advantage of it. But we need to be deliberate. We need to put the AK Athletics Kenya into the management. We need to strengthen it. We need to invest in it. We need to ensure that they get the best out of our athletes. And I think once we invest in these types of things, then we can truly claim the credit. I can tell you for a fact. I remember once when Danforth won the Olympic swimming Olympic gold. I can tell you for a fact it was purely the family that invested in it. So I think we need to also show some deliberate effort as a country, as a government, as a people.
And possibly even intervention in the education system such that there is time for that created for athletics and other things.
Yeah, where they can be able to pursue. That's why I respect the disciplined forces. Quite a number of them used to hail from the disciplined forces. And they will rank them, they will continue to pay their salaries, even as they undertake their global, you know, assignments. So I think this is the kind of support we need to continue to issue to offer our athletes.
All right. Let's move on to something else, which is today being the 31st, the TSC and NAT and teachers' unions are currently tussling, and they've given a deadline and said if the money does not reflect by midnight today, they're going to go on strike. Senator Moses Kajwang, what's your take on this, and do the teachers have justified cause to go on strike, or should they at least give some time?
Mike, the government does not respect the courts, and a government that does not respect the ruling of the courts is a government that really is close to being illegitimate. It is not an issue of whether teachers deserve the pay rise or not. The courts have already pronounced themselves on that matter. And it is an issue of implementation. And unfortunately, we cannot hear anything positive coming out of the government. Yesterday, I think Rotich was talking of about 4 scenarios, and it sounds like the scenario that they favor is one they are calling status quo, which means ignore the courts. And ignore.
Yes, it actually said the other 3 are not.
Yes. What kind of government, what kind of executive takes a decision that they will ignore a court ruling? Surely, the next 2 years before the next elections are definitely going to be very difficult for citizens of this country. Remember, the teachers had asked for a between 100 and 150% pay rise.
Actually, they say from 300% came to 150.
Yes.
Now it's 100%.
It is the TSC and SRC that proposed the 50 to 60% pay rise. They are the ones who proposed it. And the industrial court just affirmed that. The last time teachers got a negotiated pay rise was 1997. Hassan Omar Hassan was the chairman of MUSO in 1997. That is about 18 years ago. That is the last time teachers got a negotiated salary rise.
My reason for expulsion from university was essentially the 1998 teachers' strike. That because at that time our university was essentially an education campus, so that the students went on strike because it was a predominantly education campus, supporting the cause of the teachers in October of that year to get paid. And at that point, then I remember Bongo, the later Bongo, ended the strike through a negotiated settlement. In fact, when I was kicked out, I must say that the KNUT was extremely kind to me. They were the ones who facilitated part of my court processes and a few other things, because they knew the cause that we had stood for.
Okay.
Down the line, I'm a senator. The teachers are still in court.
Still having that right.
And that is the last favor they got in a negotiated manner. In between 1997 and to date, there have been some arbitrary increments in the name of harmonization. The industrial court said it very clearly. The government annually budgets for a 4% rise in civil service pay to cater for inflation.
Okay.
If you take 18 times 4, just simple mathematics, it will tell you that the teachers deserve a 64%, even if you don't compound it. We want the government to respect other independent arms, to respect the court ruling, and pay teachers. It might not be feasible to pay by a midnight. But remember, the industrial court had given the government enough time. I think it should have been paid by 1st July. And the government decided to go round and round and went up to the Supreme Court, where they were thrown out. What the government should tell the teachers is that this is a payment plan. It should not start confusing teachers with several options which result in disobedience of a court ruling.
All right, Ambrose Sweda, I know you are of the opinion last week, I don't know if that has changed,
Yes.
that the teachers should wait.
I think the opinion has not changed, although I've received a call from my friends and colleagues who are teachers, and they're like, "What are you against us?" I say, no, I'm not against the salary increase, especially now that the court has affirmed it. What I'm saying is that it will definitely have a negative impact on education. It will make hiring of teachers very expensive. Now we have a huge shortage. New teachers are likely not to be hired, thereby worsening the position for poorer Kenyans whose children go to public schools. As at now, if you look at the total money collected by government, which is about 1.4 trillion, we have become a salary nation, where you collect and pay salaries. Then a little goes to corruption, which everybody is involved in, including parliamentarians who are earning illegal salaries. Then very little go into development. So I would tell teachers that government should work out a plan of how to implement this. But teachers should also understand that this should be done in an organized way that does not hurt the country. It is a huge bill. So it's not a question of we go on strike today, we go on strike. This negotiation by ordeal, salary received by ordeal, affects this country and affects those.
But these are negotiations that started way back in 1997. What has taken so long? Why isn't there a plan that was done? And again, with a court ruling, why did they not prepare for either way of the ruling?
Government, from what I see, I'm not in it. It works through budget, which goes through parliament and through allocation. Then the same parliament decides this is how we are going to fund our budget. Now, anything huge like that which is not factored in the budget has a negative implication in the sense that it cannot be brought in midstream. So that I thought that government and teachers should agree to do a supplementary budget and then pay even if it is paid in arrears. But saying that you must pay by Monday, otherwise we go on strike, surely they live like this. People have come from Mars. It has to be factored in the budget. Where that money has to come from has to be found. Parliament has to pass it. Otherwise, we would recommend that you abolish the Senate because it's doing very little, and then we use that salary to pay teachers.
All right.
You see, whatever we decide, it's not a big deal. Whether we want to abolish the Senate, that's a cause the Kenyan people can agree upon. You know, constant contempt of an institution that was created by the people's popular view, it does not help. We have a crisis at hand, and we need to be practical. We're not here to be outrageous and, out of context. So my context will be very simple. First and foremost, I totally believe that the teachers should be paid no matter what. Even if you want to convene the parliament through a special session to approve a supplementary budget, so be it. For the last almost 20 years, we've not thought that this issue is important at all. if it was true that we had a reasonable government in the manner that Ambrose is talking about, then we'll have planned for their pay rise for the last 15, 16 years. You know, we'll have been systematically putting these things in supplementary budgets and all that. So I think it's important we prioritize education. If we really want to commit our monies into education, I mean to say that we are a nation committed to education. And I say it, before we abolish the Senate, which is a very impractical thing for us to do, but before we do that, there are so many things that can be done. Let us go and look at what is not priority spending from the various organs of government, and then put that money into, bring it forward. You know, we remember we lost $1 billion as the Senate, and I think I have no issues with that, because you know, when you lose what you do not have, you have lost nothing. So we lost $1 billion. Maybe Parliament now can lose a bit of its budget towards paying the teachers, so that we climb down on some of the things that we want to do. The executive can lose part of its budget. Therefore, everybody, I don't think the judiciary should lose any, because the judiciary is underfunded. So I think that is where we need to go in terms of systematically trying to address this plight in a more practical way. So we need to see which areas to tighten up, rather than all the time telling the teachers to sacrifice. It's for us now to sacrifice. We've told the teachers to sacrifice for the last 20 years. In fact, we even make it appear like they're not nationalists or they don't care about our students. In fact, they care so much about our students. That's the way they're in the public sector. Some of these people who are sitting governments, go and ask any of the cabinet secretaries, the MPs, the senators, governors, how many of their kids are in public schools. They are not affected at all. They're in some of the best academies in the world or in the country, and paying loads of money on a daily basis. So I think what we need to do is to also now make it a
matter of
priority to sharpen up the public sector, because that's where most of us, the poor students, go to. I went to a public school in my primary school. I went to a public school in my high school. I went to a public school in terms of a university. And therefore, if we then kill the public sector, you have created a certain asymmetry that disadvantages a certain group of people.
All right. Senator Moses Kajwang, it's easy for us to sit here and say that the government should pay and should pay and should pay. As the opposition and government in waiting, where would this money come from?
Well, there are areas which, when we are having a debate around the budget, we felt were unjustifiably funded. The budget of NYS, when the budget policy statement was first released to both houses of parliament, I think it was at 6 billion. When the budget was eventually passed, it was 25 billion. And that just passed like that. Look at CDF. And, CDF, it's a good thing, but the court ruled on it and said that it is unconstitutional and it needs to be reformed in the next period of 1 year. But Parliament went ahead, the National Assembly Budget Committee went ahead and allocated themselves, I think, close to 30-something billion shillings for CDF, which the courts had declared unconstitutional. It is possible to shuffle funds from one sector to the other. I don't buy the argument by Rotich that you can only do that at half year. One of the problems in this country is absorption of budgets. We become very ambitious when it comes to budgeting. Then when it comes to the close of the financial year, you realize there's money, and that's where corruption checks in. Because there are some brokers, entrepreneurs, who then at the last minute want to make sure that no money goes back to the exchequer. So that decision can be made early. The TSC itself, the budget of the TSC as a commission has grown exponentially over the years. In fact, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, TSC's budget has grown by more than 90%. Even TSC itself must examine itself and release some of the money and go into some austerity measures, cut out unnecessary expenditure. So as I agree with Senator Omar that everyone in this case needs to give away something. That decision can be made now. The TSC was allocated, I think, about 170 billion shillings for this financial year, and this is money that has already been released. Now, you can make a decision that to respect the court ruling, let us execute out of this money, because this is money that was supposed to run the TSC for a long period of time, much longer than 1 month. Let us pay, obey the court ruling, as we sort out, as we process the issue of supplementary budgets and the issues of shifting spending priorities from one sector to the other. That is what we want to hear the government say. But unfortunately, it sounds like the government, their strategy is to disobey the orders of the court. That is impunity. It is so sad that we are now even being told that the deputy president should disobey the ICC. that level of impunity is going to destroy this country.
Michael, I just had one point about CS Rotich, who's a good friend to everybody. The contradiction. They have monies to bail out a premeditated theft of Kenya Airways. If you look at Kenya Airways from the Mawingo to everything, in my opinion, it's premeditated theft. You know, so when they have monies to bail it out. They don't have similar monies to bail out the teachers. So I think that's the contradiction where the priorities of this country come in.
And Mike, allow me to say one thing, that this thing just didn't start in this financial year. These discussions have been on. By the time these guys went to the industrial court, the budget process was still on. There is absolutely no reason why the Ministry of Education and Treasury did not make a reserve in anticipation that they were going to pay.
All right, Empress Weda, in your opinion, is there any reason why the government cannot bail out the teachers? There was 1 billion for Mumias. We've heard that there's the one now for KQ. Why can't they bail out the teachers?
I think for teachers it's not a bailout. It is a lifelong payment. Bailing out is a recurrent expenditure. That's what the seniors don't seem to understand. So you pay the money and you will pay it until people are 60 years plus. So it is one, it will directly go into increasing the salary bill in this country. And I am saying, and now they seem to understand, that it is not a one-off thing that you do today on Monday. It is a process. There must be a supplementary budget. It has to go to Parliament, and then Parliament has to approve it. The National Assembly has to approve it, and then it is implemented. That presupposes that there is money, or there is where you get the money. Now that has to be done by government. That therefore rules out a strike on Monday or Tuesday. That's what I'm saying. When Nat and the teachers say, we are going on strike on Monday, I think they don't seem to live in this country and they don't seem to understand the process. And when parliamentarians, like the two senators here, are also talking about do this, yet they are the ones, it is in their hands. This is their job. They don't know their job. They are standing outside saying, government, government. It is them actually to introduce it and say, gentlemen, we have a problem at hand. We want to reallocate funds. Now that they don't want to do. Instead, they think that this teacher's salary will bring down a government. They get an opening to get to power. That's a very wrong way of looking at it.
Senator Moses,
just a minute, I have to respond to that. One of the reasons I think Weda is not a celebrated lawyer is his lack of understanding of constitutional doctrines and all that. You know, what happens is he knows that this process starts somewhere. He knows who controls the National Assembly, which is the budgetary sector of the approval sector for the national government, and he knows where the national government, who owns it, or who controls the national government. For him to totally pretend that court can just go somewhere and start a budgetary process is a fallacy. Is the lowest form of a person who does not understand the Constitution. That's why I've never heard him taking many constitutional cases or being a giant in constitutional practice in Kenya. But that said and done, I think what happens is we as Parliament also need to now take up this matter more particularly the National Assembly, more succinctly, because it's a national government budget, and they are the ones who do. We are restrained if he does not understand that. We are restrained from getting to matters finances, particularly matters of national government. In fact, the Constitution places a caveat that we shall not get into matters finances. The only finances we were able to do is the division of revenue between national government and the county government. So I think what ought to be done, now is for government to demonstrate, as the teachers say they're striking. I think it's also a way of saying you must demonstrate, you know, even to court or even to the world, that there's something you're doing. 1 year, I think a week after the ruling, what has been done? Where has the movement been? So why should we trust that we just allow ourselves to wait for the government to act in good faith? So I think the teachers, if they must demonstrate good faith, there must be some kind of
action being shown from the government side. As we wind up on that.
And Mike, you see this thing of teachers, and I disagree with my brother Ambrose, because teachers are very respectable people. I'm a son of a teacher. My mother is a teacher. My brother and sisters are teachers. They live in this country, so you cannot create an impression that teachers operate like they have come from another world. But the government, you know, the executive must be the one that is initiating some solution. Even the budget committee cannot wake up and say that Bwana Rotich, this is how you're going to do it. It is Bwana Rotich and the cabinet that is supposed to initiate and bring the matter to the National Assembly, so that the National Assembly can make the necessary adjustments. Now, when teachers are saying that you need to pay us, as the courts ruled, then they hear that TSC is going back to the Supreme Court again. Because they are saying that their case was dismissed on a technicality, and they are still intent on going back to the same Supreme Court. That shows that they are dishonest, and they are willing to do anything and everything to deny teachers what they believe is rightfully theirs. There has to be a sign. The government must put out a sign that, yes, we are committed to this. This is going to be another PR exercise. And I can tell you now, this is politics. We will engage the teachers in brinkmanship. They are going to go on strike. They're going to paralyze education so that the president can come and say that now I have ordered that you be paid.
But haven't you just said that the executive should step in and do something about it? Isn't that part of this?
They need to do it in a timely manner. They are waiting for things to get wrong. They are waiting for us to get to the edge so that the president can pull a quick PR move and say that he's the one.
So are you suggesting it's deliberate that they're waiting for that to happen?
But also another question begs, who's in charge? Because you see Deputy President Ruto says one thing, Henry Koskei says another. I was told here once by the TNA Secretary General that one has to support whether the boss now becomes the last word. So I think let us hope that the boss last word is really the last word, because we said the same thing about the Mumias Sugar. Mina is saying one thing, Museveni is saying another, Uhuru is saying another, and it's just some kind of game that sometimes is very mucky. So I hope, as he puts it, let's avert the crisis before it happens.
Yeah, and it's the same game we did with sugar. The president went with a check to Mumias that he is now the savior of the sugar industry with 1 billion for a company that has reported a 3 billion loss. They've issued a profit warning.
But doesn't it have to start somewhere? We have to start somewhere.
No, Mike, we must not run a country through PR. We must run a country by making tough decisions in a timely manner, not waiting for things to get bad. Then we show up on social media and Twitter.
Although one might argue, that he's letting the systems work, and if they don't work, then the boss has to come in and
no, unfortunately not. Rotich reports to the president, is a member of the cabinet, and if he's so much out of his depth on this particular matter, they should not wait for things to get out of hand. Yes. The reality is, teachers, and just let me finish this, parents were expecting to take their children back to school today. There's a lot of uncertainty. I personally have got students and children I sponsor who are in public school. I'm not sure whether to take them. But I support teachers. And so if the teachers declare a strike, it is up to the executive, which is headed by the president, to act in a timely manner, rather than waiting for things to go bad so that they can pull a PR move.
Okay. I think these people, especially the CORD brigade, I think that they have got a chip which they'll cling on to power. The way the systems work, the president would then, the matter would go to the Treasury. The Treasury would look at what they have, the options. Then it is taken to Cabinet. Cabinet includes the President. They look at it, the options on what options do we have in paying this salary. Then it goes to Parliament. Then Parliament decides, and laws are altered, or budget is altered, and then payments are done. It is not in a decree manner, the way it is done in CORD or WIPA. It is something systematic, and a good government must be systematic. And that is why I'm saying, because it is a court order, payment has to be done. But teachers must understand that it is a systematic process which they need to wait for. So that the question they should be talking about is not about strike, but about tell us the formula, where is it?
Yeah, but
if you don't, please allow me, the son of a teacher, this teacher was not a disciplinarian. He should have told you this thing.
What is
Senator,
what is difficult in the executive saying that?
Let him finish his point. He gave you time to finish.
Let the teachers go for the formula. They say, look, give us the way forward. It has to be done. You have no choice. And I think government also knows that. But it is a process. Don't listen to CORD people trying to endear themselves to yourself for election. Election is still 2 years. We are talking about today.
But you see, I talked here that I was expelled from the university because of teachers. I have always been on the side of teachers. And that should tell you that this is not an emotive campaign. You see, and when I told him that he's not a good constitutional lawyer, so suddenly he has remembered the process. You know, just a short while ago he had told us. A short while ago he had said how it is for us to come together. So suddenly he has remembered it. You know, this amnesia. This amnesia.
On Thursday, we were celebrating, or is it, let me call it the anniversary, for 5 years since the promulgation of the Constitution in this country. On a scale of 1 to 10, do you think we've done well in terms of having it implemented?
Yeah, Mike, 5 years, with all the challenges we faced, we have one of the most progressive constitutions. It's one of the most bulky constitutions.
A very ambitious one as well.
Very, very ambitious. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll put us at 6. And a qualified 6. There are certain areas where we have started off well. There are certain areas where we've been forced to do certain things. Devolution is there, and it is making a difference in the lives of people. We could have done better on devolution, but there are issues of governance, there are issues of structures that are still affecting us. One area that we must examine ourselves on is issues of integrity. I think that's chapter 6 of the Constitution. That is the one thing that we have thrown out of the window. And once you throw that out of the window, you lose the essence of this Constitution. That is one area which tempts me even to rate us at 4 out of 10. But it's still a 6 out of 10. Another area that we have not, where the experiment has not succeeded very well, should be chapter 8, where we are talking about the legislature, and particularly the relationship between the Senate and the National Assembly. That really has been an experiment that needs to be looked at again, because we have a situation where we have 2 houses of parliament that are not working in harmony. I'll give you an example of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Bill that has been introduced in the National Assembly by Adan Kenyan. For your information, a similar bill is in the Senate, introduced by the leader of government, the leader of majority, Professor Kithure Kindiki. And these are bills that, this is not a Senate powers and privileges bill. It is a parliamentary powers and privileges bill. You find 2 houses of parliament coming with bills with the same essence. Of course, the one that came through the National Assembly had got provisions on gagging the media and infringing on the rights of the media. So those are some of the problems you're having with the manner in which we structured the legislature within the Constitution. I feel that this Constitution, after 5 years, is ripe for amendment. And we in CORD, we have come up with certain areas where we believe we should amend the Constitution so that we make it much more consistent, we make it much more aspirational, and we make it much more realistic. But integrity, chapter 6 of the Constitution, the day we mutilated that chapter, that is the day we started going
But when
wrong.
you say we mutilated, you do realize that this is actually something that we as Kenyans must participate in, not just the government or those in authority, but even just the civilian Kenyan must participate, especially in matters of integrity.
Oh yeah, and the blame really, in this matter, it is not just even to the executive. In fact, the current executive is a beneficiary of the mutilation of Chapter 6, because we set very high standards for public officers. Somebody went to court before the last elections, and the courts ruled that it does not matter whether you have been accused of rape and displacement and murder. It is the people who are going to decide whether you are going to be their leader. But look at Chapter 6. It is very, very clear that there are certain values and principles that people who aspire to offices, state offices, must exhibit. The vote of the people, because we are now putting supremacy in the hands of the people. But Jesus Christ, when he was crucified, he was called all sorts of names by the same people that he was serving. We must be careful about this thing of tyranny and saying that the vote can baptize. If Weda was accused of rape, murder and displacement, unfortunately is not, that once he's voted, he ceases to be a rapist, a murderer, and a displacer of persons. So that's why I'm saying the current executive is a beneficiary of the watering down of Chapter 6 of the
Okay,
Constitution.
Empress Weda, on a scale of 1 to 10, where we are on the Constitution, I'm sure you have a few things you want to respond to.
I think we have done very well. Let me first of all respond. Somebody is presumed innocent until proved guilty by the court. Otherwise, people who are expelled for indiscipline from university like him would not have been senators. You allow somebody due process. But on a scale of 1 to 10, I think the Constitution has done very well. We have done very well. It has transformed this country 100% in terms of culture, in terms of the way we run government, in terms of, so that what the hiccups we are experiencing are based on nostalgia, the old power, the old order. People who are looking back with nostalgia and saying, I wish I was this kind of president or this kind of prime minister or this kind of minister. So going forward, if the Constitution was given time to mature, it will transform this country for the better. The major hiccups we have, number one, is money. Is a Constitution that requires a lot of money to implement. And that requires that we grow the economy, expand the cake, and then the next that we have had is we have had a bloated parliament. We have had a Senate that has practically nothing much to do than bickering and talking kidogo. Either we trim it or give it more powers or abolish it altogether. Then we have also had questions of, if you look at the ministers, they don't seem to have thrust because of lack of clout. Now this has been a negative impact, but overall I would give it about 70%. If we add in, if we inject in more money, and I think we have, as it is given time to grow, it will grow bigger. Otherwise, the amendments are for people who are nostalgic, people who want to look back, people who realize, oh, at this rate we are not going to get power. So they want to amend here, amend there, and I thank those who made the Constitution, including myself, that in that Constitution we have a requirement for a referendum. These guys would have amended every morning. They amend. You want the power, amend. Referendum is the brick, and thank God for it.
Okay, Senator Hassan Umar.
I think 5 out of 10 will be, in fact, quite generous, and that's how I'll put it. First and foremost is to agree with Weda that the presumption of innocence, which he talked about. So
that's amazing. You agreeing with Weda?
Yes, because because I also want to send him to I don't know what I still believe is peripheral, but he can, if he ever bumps into Uhuru Kenyatta, to tell him to stop killing suspects or to allow the government to the full length of investigations. If you saw yesterday,
but Senator, that we cannot justify. We cannot say that
listen,
the president.
why am I saying that? Let me tell you, there is either a commission, governments either commits an act of omission or commission. And you heard what Martha Karua said yesterday. If the frequency of the disappearances in the extrajudicial killing of suspects in such a manner, that in such a wide scale, so in frequent manner, can only demonstrate one thing: either there's a meltdown of the rule of law, or it's a deliberate action of the state. There can only be two of those analyses. It is not possible. Even some of them have been caught on camera, and KTN ran some of those clips in terms of people being caught on CCTV cameras, and there are no questions, there are no answers, and it's not only one. I know a couple which have been caught on CCTV cameras. That kind of style.
Although with that kind of with that arrest, they claimed they were policemen. We have no proof as to whether they were policemen or not.
But if you ever all the time get a CCTV and you're able to zero down on some of the suspects, and the frequency and the audacity upon which it happens is just telling. You know what happens in crimes against humanity, which you heard Manasseh talking about. It is systematic and widespread. So therefore, it has already met that threshold, that it has been systematic. It has been targeted to a certain group of individuals. It has been as widespread, and in a manner that is very alarming. So I think so in terms of that presumption of innocence, we also did not kill anybody who we suspected in The Hague. We did not execute them summarily. We have allowed them the full benefits of a due process. So I think we must allow our people the full benefits of a due process. So when you're talking about the mechanical, why am I saying 5? The mechanical implementation, the nebulous issues, giving some 15%, which you coerce with figures that were audited 3-4 years ago and saying you did actually 20. Those kinds of mechanical implementation has been okay. But in terms of the software of the Constitution, the values, Chapter 4, I can tell you human rights actors will give a resounding fail in the implementation of the Constitution. And Chapter 4 is about the Kenyan person. Everywhere else in the Constitution makes reference to every other person. It's the only place where it talks about an individual in the Constitution. It's Chapter 4, the Bill of Rights. It's as a charter for Kenya's socio-economic and political development, issues of social justice, ensuring that we make our people better off, in terms of effective programs to deal with poverty, in terms of ensuring there is equity in government, to ensure that there is widespread representation, to decimate the cabal of ethnicity, to deal with corruption in a manner that is decisive and firm. All these things have not taken place, and these are part of the constitutional doctrine that tended to alter fundamentally the nature and character of our politics and government. So what happens is we have this narrative about showcasing development as only putting up a road and putting up cabros. That's why you see these people saying, chap chap this, chap chap that. Because they have no idea what governance is about. Kenya and Africa right now needs a governance leader, a person who will respect the rule of law, who will ensure democratic development, who will not try to roll down back the freedoms of the media, who will not try to roll down back the freedoms of expressions, the things that are value systems and principles of our Constitution.
Okay.
But that's said and done in the totality. I think in terms of devolution, that was the actual promise of this Constitution. There I blame both governors.
Devolution,
No, I blame both the governors and the national government. The national government is not pro-devolution. That's why when you hear people talk about the abolition of the Senate all the time, they are people who do not understand devolved structures of government. The architecture of any constitution that has different levels of government presupposes a Senate that is strengthened to give weight to that. If you look at constitutional practice across the world, that is how devolved systems do look like. It must be a Senate that provides for that devolution. Different countries have different structures of that Senate. So then but the governors have totally missed the script on devolution. They have tried to mirror national government by not taking into consideration what Article 174 of the Constitution on the objects of devolution really are: socio-economic development and service delivery.
Okay. Senator Moses Kajwang, what do you say is the way forward? What do we need to do to ensure that with the little time left that at least we have this implemented? We only have a year on some of the bills that have were extended with a year, and that needs to be done. Is this going to be hurriedly done and not thought into carefully?
Yeah, that's a fear that the close to 28 bills that had a constitutional deadline, now that you have extended it by another 1 year, that will end up doing a quick and shoddy job. And if you look at the importance of some of these bills, you've got bills touching on the one issue that Kenyans feared Jubilee did not have the guts to address: land. You've got bills talking on land, and we saw there was a maximum and minimum acreage bill that was introduced, and it was really a very ridiculous bill. You've got bills touching on historical injustices, and you also have certain bills that touch on the judiciary. The 1 year, I just want to call upon the executive again, and this must be very clear, that these bills are initiated by the executive. They go to CIC, the Kenya Law Reform Commission, the AG, who then drafts and submits them to Parliament. Before that is done, Parliament really does not have anything to consider. Parliament here being either the National Assembly or the Senate. So I just want to call upon the Cabinet to take this matter very seriously. One of the biggest problems that I foresee that will stop us from timely discussion and conclusion of these bills is that right now you've got a cabinet that is operating at 60%. You've got cabinet secretaries who are holding on to 2 dockets that they find just overwhelming. Previously, you had cabinet ministers with their assistants, and that has been abolished in the new constitution, which is well and good, because we need to have the bureaucrats and technocrats doing their job. So they might not have the right level of focus, space, and time to initiate some of these bills. Now, what do we need to do? One of the issues that is being discussed currently, touching on devolution, is on healthcare. I just want to tell Kenyans, it will be a disaster if we revert healthcare back to the national government. We can have a discussion on management of human resources, but actual delivery and management of infrastructure, as far as healthcare is concerned, is best done at the devolved level. Personally, and this is a personal view, I believe that doctors and nurses, we should create a health service commission similar to the teacher service commission. If you see, one of the things that doctors and nurses complain about is immobility across counties. So you go to Homa Bay Primary School, Homa Bay High School, you go to the university, become a doctor, get a job at Homa Bay Health District Hospital, and then you've got no options for career growth or movement to go to Kiambu or any other county. So it can help us to set up a health service commission, but issues of infrastructure and actual delivery and management of healthcare should remain with the devolved units of government. We in CORD have made certain proposals on constitutional amendment, and unlike what my brother says, these are not amendments that are geared to making us acquire power. We want to have a constitution and a constitutional dispensation that will reduce this competition for the top seat. Right now, the beauty of this new constitution is that we've got 47 governments plus one government in Nairobi. And 24 of the 47 governments are run by CORD governors. So you've got a situation where power is now shared. You know, previously it was a winner takes it all. We want to strengthen and empower these counties by giving them more resources so that people can get development kule mashinani, they can see it and they can feel it. Okay. I believe that is something that is achievable.
Ambrose Weda, way forward on the constitution and to ensure that that 1 year bills are not just passed for the sake of meeting a constitution.
I think 1 year is very long. The one that would require very effective public participation so much and down is the laws that deal with land. But there are several other bills that when they are correctly drawn and debated by sober people, it would not take much. I think they can settle other bills and then allow enough time, like 4 months, to deal with land bills so that we get it right, because land can burn this country down. But otherwise, 28 bills apart from land, the others can be done very quickly if it is drafted properly, and I think it is doable. And I think our parliamentarians, especially those in the National Assembly, should get down to work. They should not get down to jostling for more money, more power, more of this. Going forward, if you look at our constitution, I would say let us allow it time to take root. 5 years for a constitution that has been calculated to serve us for another 100 or 200 years is too early to start amending so that we allow Raila to be president or allow President Uhuru to go out. We do. Let's allow it to come in. On medical, on health.
The health issue.
Personally, I'm of the view that devolving health was a mistake that we'll have in the long run to consider.
Why was it a mistake?
Why I say so is that, like, where is my money? Because money for health is supposed to be allocated. My money for health is supposed to be allocated to my county. I live in Machakos County. I work in Nairobi County. I come from Kisumu County. I've invested in several other counties where I go to. And I now also work in Migori County. So when I fall ill and I go to Migori County, whose funds am I using? Once we exhaust the health money given to Migori people, and my money in Machakos County remains intact, it should be relooked in such a way that we do not spread health facilities thin. A small hospital there, small hospital there, small hospital there. Yet some of these institutions require massive investment. Okay. If you are talking about cancer center, we want massive investment, and that can only be in one place where we put all our resources. So that needs to be looked at, not basically to deny the counties part of it, but we stratify it so that the major areas are with the national government, okay, and the minor areas are down there.
You know, on that score where you said, Weda said he was one of those constitutional architects, which I strongly do not see that is very truth in that. But in that constitutional architecture, they provided for amendment of the constitution, and it does not say at what point that constitution can be changed. You can do an amendment today and do another one tomorrow. It's the kind. It just puts a higher threshold, so in terms of amendments. These things are generated by the need and the desire of society. I think with the U.S. Constitution underwent this first amendment within 3 years. The Ugandan constitution underwent its amendment in about 4 or 5 years. So I think within reasonability, when you get into a new house and say, or you get into a new studio and you see a few things are not working, you don't say, this studio was supposed to be built for 10 years, it has a warranty of 10 years, so we're not going to touch it. It's fallacious to say that. But in terms of the health issue, you have to understand the politics behind it. James Macharia went and purchased 38 billion worth of equipment. It's not a question of whether the health to be devolved or not. It's about the money and the procurements. You know, health is an essential service. It has so much money. It in fact, but partly on capital investment, rather than just like the TSC where we put money but it is for salaries. It is a real investment opportunity. When James Macharia purchased those equipments irregularly and illegally, unconstitutionally, he said, it was not a question of what the counties wanted, it is what the people of Kenya wanted, but it is what the constitution dictates. So I think what happens is it is a question. These facilities have been people will tell you, Elgeyo Marakwet, Wajir, and other places that health today is better off. Definitely, where the challenges have been is where counties have been given these big hospitals like level 5 hospitals, Mombasa, Kisumu, Nyeri, and a few others. And this was the money that we wanted to give an additional 7 billion to manage, if you do recall. So you give billions of shillings to the national government, the Ministry of Health, to manage a policy, and give far less money for those who are managing the actual facilities. So there is the politics here of national government's desire to win back the health docket, so that it can continue to undertake these large-scale procurements, and which are opaque. They do not want to divulge the kind of deal.
Although they did say that they gave details of how the deal came to be in the 38 billion.
But we want to see the contract. They have not given the contract to the Council of Governors to date. They have not made it public. There is need for disclosure, so that we know how these things come up. On account of that, you have to understand, Michael, the actual politics behind it is not just about perceptions that our health facilities are dwindling. It's creating a demand to shift them by those anti-devolution.
All right, we need to wind up, but last comments from you, Moses Kajwang, and this is in regards to the Deputy President and ICC. There are those who are proposing and saying that you should literally disregard it because it has become political. What's your take on it?
I'm not a lawyer, but I would still advise the Deputy President to respect the ICC the way he has done consistently, because anything short of that will cast not only him but Kenya as a country in bad light. I request him to respect the rule of law that he swore to defend. And you remember, the Deputy President is at ICC because he's accused of having been the leader of ODM troops that perpetrated the violence. And I just want to remind the Deputy President that at this point, because President Kenyatta's case is over and is the only one remaining, when President Kenyatta's case was on, Amina Mohammed was all over the place flying. Even the Deputy President himself was sent on the Hustler's jet to go and lobby at the AU and other places. But this time round, because he's the only one remaining, no one seems to care about him. I just want to tell him that we will still find buddies back in COD where he started off from, because these guys have snookered him.
Okay, well done.
Yeah, I think that same issue came when time came for President Uhuru to go to The Hague, and everybody were falling over each other, telling the president, don't go. I saw rallies in Nyeri, rallies wherever, rallies, and I see it now. I know and I trust and I honestly believe and I continue believing that the Deputy President is a very intelligent man, and he will ignore those people, because those are his enemies. The ones who are telling him not to go. I will urge him to go, and I see God is with him, and he's going to get victory, notwithstanding the gerrymandering by the Bensouda team.
Okay.
The legal strategy by Bensouda is very clear. Once you restate the witnesses, you also now put those witnesses, the recanted evidence and the witnesses on trial. So they also commit a crime of perjury. So that secures the reputation of the court, such as these people now themselves will be on trial for lying to the court. Secondly, if you're able to restate evidence in the Ruto's case, we will restate the evidence also in the Uhuru case, because that Kenyan situation too is also now under scrutiny, and the judges have said so. So subsequent applications will be made. Because in the scheme of the ICC, the assertions by Bensouda, they have never witnessed such unprecedented recant recanting of evidence as they have witnessed in this particular Kenya 1 and Kenya 2 situation. So therefore, when we restate that evidence, so we're able then to at least secure the reputation of the court. Secondly, to ensure that we get conclusively to the heart of this matter, whether the witnesses were coached by anybody. They need to tell us who they were and at what particular point. Therefore, we put the entire process itself on trial. Okay. So an astute legal strategy, but the Deputy President needs to continue. To continue
following the rule of law.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. That's where we wind up the way it is this morning.